Leadership Unleashed, a place where we explore leadership ideas and dare to question the status quo. Leading change is really important in a modern workforce. There is so much coming at us, there's so many forces, so many opposing goals and objectives. It's really important to remember at the center of all this, we have people, and people need to be led through change very intentionally. So what I'm going to talk to you today about are the four major things that you really ought to pay attention to. It will affect how you pattern your communications, how you talk to people, how you show up every day at work. If you really consider these four things, you're going to get the best out of your people and have the best chance of success. So let's start right away with a strong why. Obviously, we've heard all about this. We've heard about the why. We know it's really important to make sure that we connect people with a larger motivation for whatever change we're trying to put in place. The best motivation really speaks to people's identity and changes the way they identify with their work. They become a better person. Instead of just saying we're moving from this thing to this thing, we say things like, we want to become an organization that treats people like X. The best motivation really speaks to people's identity and turns them really into change agents. If you show up for a company and it literally taps into your identity, you're going to be really motivated to be on board. If it's just a job and a bunch of checklists to do, it's much harder. So the best change initiatives always start with a strong why and how I can get you to identify with the change and really become a different person at the other end of it. A good example of this is Apple products. If you watch Simon Sinek's talk, he does a TED Talk, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. He really gets deeply into this, that Apple has really changed how people think about technology. It's not even that a computer company became a phone company. That's interesting in and of itself, that Apple started out as a computer company and now is into phones and iPods and every other thing. It's really become a lifestyle. So if you think about what they've done, and Sinek really talks about this, it connects people to something broader than themselves. Their stuff is cool. It's a lifestyle. You're connected. You're a Apple guy. Sinek says that great leaders start with a strong why, then they talk about the how, and then the what. We usually do that backwards. And I'm suggesting that we do a similar thing and start with a very strong why. We need to demonstrate a clear vision of what the future will look like. Exactly how the new state is going to be. Is it going to be easier, better, help us to get better care of our customers, really painting that vision for people instead of just saying, hey, we're changing this thing to that thing and your life's going to be really hard. And then you need at least one concrete, reasonable step towards the future. So this is more than just telling them why, telling them what the future is going to look like. Then we actually have to take a step and move in that direction. And that can be training, sending people off to get acquainted with a new product if you're implementing something new, but some concrete step to really get people motivated. Maybe just education or something like that, but really that first step, and here's what it's going to look like as we move forward. Most of you have probably seen organizations where they just focus on the what. It's very transactional. We're just moving from A to B. We're moving from X to Y, or whatever it is that you're doing. And don't hardly spend any time really talking to the human being that wants to know why. They want to know how it's going to look in the future. They're worried about their job. They're worried about how it's going to impact them personally, especially if somebody has an identity wrapped around the job they currently do. When I was a young leader, I would often get a snarling CEO demanding me to do something like boost volume with no other direction other than, we want more and we want it now. We have no idea how to get it. You go figure it out, which was a great challenge in and of itself. And I'm okay with a little ambiguity, but I'll tell you, when you have no idea where to start and your leader hasn't really told you why we're doing it, where we want to go, and here's what it's going to look like, and here's that first step to get it started, it's really hard to get motivated for a lot of people. That's remarkably different than explaining why we want to boost volume, what the future would look like as we expand our portfolio, and then the first steps, like you got to get out there and talk to these 5 people or talk to these 10 businesses to really get yourself boosted. When you combine these 3 aspects of starting with a strong why, talking about what the future and painting a compelling vision of what it's going to look like, and then taking those steps to really move people forward, a practical step forward, you can start to build the case for change in people's minds. Because again, we're trying to get to the emotional part of people, not so much the practical part of people. It really helps people get on board. Now, there are people that just don't want to change, and we've all seen them. I've seen people literally lose their jobs because they're unwilling to move or have such a philosophical disagreement where things are going. And I find that sad. And I find it sad mostly on the leadership front, that we as leaders haven't done our job to make sure we've really created a compelling why, that we really have made sure they understood what the future was going to look like and how they were going to be included in it. And then the steps to get them there. We're not just going to shove you down the road. We're going to practically get you training or move you in the right direction. Now, you're probably going to wonder, what about those that just won't get on board? Interestingly enough, you don't really need 100% of the people on board all the time. You just need most of the people on board most of the time. I have seen that this just kills progress many times because we're waiting for that one last holdout person and just trying to bend them over to our way of thinking, or we don't want to upset them before moving an initiative forward. And initiatives just stall and stall and stall as we can't get traction with that final person. Sure gives them a lot of power too, which is unfortunate. Obviously, getting most of the people on board most of the time is really, really important. I've always said if you're a military general and you're going to push your troops forward to conquer some objective, if you don't have most of your soldiers on board and they don't really understand why you're doing it, what you're doing, and how you're going to do it, you're going to probably be in serious trouble. You need to get at least 80% of people on board before you even think about moving forward. And if you haven't gotten that 80%, you're going to have to go back and do it again and again and again. You're going to have to reformat your messaging so you really make sure that compelling why is there. You're going to have to really paint that vision for the future. And if you haven't done that, you got to start over and do it again and again and again. So there you have it, the 4 things you need to create change. Start with a really compelling why. Describe in detail what the change will look like in the future. Use graphics and imaging and video in every possible way to boost people's connection and really start to change their identity so they can understand how they fit in this new world that you're talking about. Take a concrete step in the new direction. And that can be branding, it can be celebrations, it can be training, but really taking that first step towards changing that identity towards the new future. And last, number 4, make sure that you consider that change really happens in people's hearts first, before it happens in their mind and then ultimately their body. When you do this deliberately, it will help pave the way to change. It gets people's hearts on board in addition to their minds and really helps change their identity to a place where they can really embrace the change and really become champions to moving in a new direction. Thank you so much for watching today. If you like what you saw, please go and hit that subscribe button. Make sure your notifications are turned on, and that way you'll receive a notification anytime new video content comes out. Now go out there and lead.